Welcome to The Wind in the Willows. Kenneth Grahame's beloved tale is not really a story about animals at all. It is about home and friendship and the quiet contentment of ordinary days. This is a world of riverbanks and meadows, of cozy burrows and crackling fires, where the greatest adventures often begin with simply stepping outside on a spring morning. Come and meet the creatures who live beside the river and discover why, after all our wanderings, there is no place quite like home. It began, as the best things often do, with restlessness. Deep underground, in his little home beneath the earth, Mole had been spring cleaning all morning, whitewashing, scrubbing, dusting, until suddenly, without quite knowing why, he threw down his brush and said aloud, "Bother!" and also, "Hang spring cleaning." Something was calling to him, something above. He scrambled up through the tunnel, through the loose earth and roots, and emerged, blinking, breathless, into a meadow flooded with sunshine. The air was full of birdsong and the smell of growing things. Mole had never felt anything quite like it. The ribbon of light was the river. Mole had heard of such things, but never seen one. He sat on the bank and watched it flow past, glinting, gurgling, always moving, always the same. On the far side, he noticed a dark hole in the bank, and in front of it, a water rat was sitting in the sunshine, tying up a small blue boat. "Hello, would you mind terribly? I've never seen a river before, you see." "Never seen a river? Well, we shall have to fix that at once. Hop in." The rat rowed them out into the stream, and Mole discovered what it meant to be on the water, the gentle rocking, the green banks sliding by, the willows trailing their fingers in the current. It was, he decided, the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to him. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply missing about in boats. That first day became many days. Rat showed Mole his world, the riverbank with all its secret paths, the picnic spots and swimming holes, the neighbouring animals who nodded hello as you passed. There were the ducks, who were rather silly but good-natured, the herons, who kept to themselves, and always the river, moving past like time itself. One afternoon, Rat announced they would visit Toad, a friend who lived up the river at Toad Hall. It was, Rat explained, a rather grand house, and Toad was a rather grand sort of fellow. Rich, generous, enthusiastic about everything. Perhaps too enthusiastic. Toad is the best of fellows, but he does have a tendency to become obsessed with things. Last year it was houseboats. Before that, punting. The trouble is, he never sticks with anything. Toad Hall was indeed grand. Ivy-covered walls, sweeping lawns down to the water. A boathouse full of craft in various states of neglect. They found Toad in the stable yard, standing before a magnificent canary-yellow gypsy caravan. They did go along, partly because Toad was so persuasive, and partly because it seemed rude not to. The caravan trundled down the country lanes, and Mole had to admit there was something pleasant about the hedgerows passing slowly by, the smell of wood smoke from distant cottages. Then, on the second day, a motor car came roaring past. The horse panicked, the caravan tumbled into a ditch, and Toad, rather than being upset, sat in the middle of the road with a glazed expression, murmuring, "Poop, poop, what a magnificent machine! What speed! What power! The caravan is finished. Motor cars are the only thing worth having." Oh dear, here we go again. What followed was rather a lot of trouble.
Toad bought motor cars, many motor cars, and crashed every single one. He was warned by the magistrates, banned from driving, and made to promise he would stop. He did not stop. One day, unable to resist, Toad stole a motor car from outside an inn. He was caught, tried, and sentenced to 20 years in a dungeon for theft, reckless driving, and, the judge seemed particularly offended by this, gross impertinence to the rural police. Toad sat in his cell in the remotest dungeon of the grimmest castle in all England and wept. It seemed his adventures had come to a rather sorry end.
But kindness exists in unexpected places. The jailer's daughter took pity on Toad. She helped him escape, disguised as a washerwoman, and he fled through the countryside in a borrowed dress and bonnet. There were further misadventures, a stolen train, a barge, a great deal of running, but eventually, muddy and exhausted, Toad found himself on familiar ground. He arrived at Rat's door just as the first stars were appearing, and collapsed onto the doorstep. "Ratty, I'm home! I've had the most extraordinary time! You won't believe the half of it!" "Toad, you look dreadful! Come inside, there's soup on the stove." And that, really, is what friends are for. But meanwhile, something had happened to Mole. One cold winter evening, walking home with Rat through the wild wood, Mole had become separated from his friend. Lost among the dark trees, hearing strange sounds, he had huddled at the base of an old oak until Rat found him. And then, almost by accident, they discovered a door set into the earth. It was the home of Badger. They had stumbled upon it half-frozen, and Badger, gruff at first, then kindly, had taken them in. His underground home was vast and warm, built partly from the ruins of an ancient city long since buried beneath the wood. "Come in, come in! Terrible night to be out. There's fire and food and plenty of room. This house has stood a long time, and it will stand a long time yet." There was bad news to share. While Toad had been away, Toad Hall had been overrun. A gang of weasels and stoats from the wild wood had moved in, sleeping in the beds, drinking the wine, generally making a disgraceful mess of things. Something would have to be done. Toad Hall belongs to Toad. Whatever his faults, that house has been in his family for generations. We shall take it back. And so they made a plan. Badger knew of a secret tunnel that led from the riverbank right into the heart of Toad Hall, a passage from the old days, long forgotten. On a certain night, when the weasels would be celebrating, the four friends would creep inside and reclaim what was rightfully Toad's. It worked beautifully. Through the dark tunnel they crept, Badger leading, then Rat, then Mole, with Toad bringing up the rear and trying very hard to be brave. They emerged in the butler's pantry just as the weasels' banquet was in full swing. Spring came round again, as it always does. Mole was back in his own little home now, not the grand burrow of Badger, nor the comfortable riverside rooms of Rat, but his own small place that he had fled so suddenly a year before. He had found it again on a winter evening, quite by chance, and the smell of it, his own home, had moved him almost to tears.
"It isn't much, I know, compared to where you all live. It's your home, Mole. That makes it something no other place can be."
Toad, somewhat reformed, still lived at Toad Hall, though he had sold the motor cars and taken up gardening. Badger kept to his underground kingdom, emerging now and then to check on his friends, and Rat remained by the river, where he had always been, where he always would be. And the seasons turned, as they do in that country by the river. The willows budded and leafed and shed and stood bare again. The water rose and fell. The animals went about their lives, visiting each other, sharing meals, helping out when help was needed, leaving each other alone when solitude was called for. There were no more great adventures, and that was quite all right. The adventure, you see, had never really been the point. The point was the river, and the friendships, and the knowledge that somewhere downstream someone was always ready to put the kettle on. Sometimes, late on summer evenings, Mole would sit on the riverbank and watch the light fade from the water and feel, without quite being able to explain it, that everything was exactly as it should be. The Wind in the Willows. Thank you for listening.